Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder of Clarity, an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world. At Clarity, our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership, and I believe today's episode is going to do exactly that. So let's jump into another episode of Leadership Conversations. Welcome to Leadership Conversations. I'm Jono White, and I am really excited to introduce our guest today. Our guest is Mark Plitzuweit. Mark, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first off, it'd be great if you can just tell us a little bit about the role you're in and the organization you work for.
Okay, great. My name is Mark Plitzuweit. I am the president, CEO, and superintendent of the most unique family of charter schools anywhere in the world. We are Edkey, Inc., and we have 26 individual schools and programs comprising 11,000 students and about 1,100 employees. When I say we're the most unique, each one of those 26 programs has their own individual mission and vision and serves very specific populations of students in specific communities. So that's what makes us so unique. We aren't a cookie cutter model of education. We drop in schools based on what the communities need, not based on what our needs are. I've been in this role since 2016, since the spring of 2016. And we've seen just some massive growth as an organization. When I started out, we had about 14 schools and programs. And like I said, we're up to 26. We had about 4,000 students. We're up to about 11,000. So We've grown exponentially over the last few years.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I can't wait to chat about leadership with you because, like you said, I think I guess how unique you are in the space with what you do is really fascinating. But before we jump into that, really the heart of Leadership Conversations is to look at the story of leaders like yourself. So I'd love to hear as much of the Mark story of leadership as you want to tell, I guess, thinking about how you became a leader and looking back at the story. Yeah, Mark's story. Feel free to go for it.
Okay. Well, I think it all goes back to I was a 3-sport athlete in high school and in college. And I think a lot of my leadership skills and abilities came about through athletics. Being a leader on the court, being a leader on the field, just being able to communicate and to work with people of all different strengths and abilities really molded my ability to become a leader here, in the role I'm in now. That being said, I've been in education now for, like I said, 28 years. This is my 28th year. Yep. And I started out in the classroom and was only in the classroom for 2 years before they said, you've got a different skill set. They identified that I was one of those natural leaders because I was more of a guide by the side than I was the heavy hand top down leader. I've always just been the guide by the side to be able to help people to be able to discover what their strengths are and to be able to flourish using their strengths. So that's really, in a nutshell, that's how I became a leader. Is someone saw something in me and followed through, guided me into that role, and I've taken it and just run with it since.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. So tell me a little bit about, I guess for you, what are some of the moments, if you look back, that have had the biggest impact on forming you as the leader and the person that you are today?
So I think first and foremost, I look back to my parents. I was one of those high school students that had their father as their high school principal. Yeah. So I got to see leadership in all sorts of different fashions that way. So not that that's unique. You find a lot of individuals that go into education have other family members that were already in education. So it's just the way of life, I guess. But um, I also think back to when I was in college, when I wasn't sure what I was going to do when it came to a career. But I met with one of my college professors, my favorite college professor. I'll just say it,
Yeah.
and he was very adamant that I had some specific skill sets that he thought would be very beneficial to society in general. But he said there's one thing that you don't do. He goes, you don't listen to people. Life changing conversation, hearing that from a mentor, college professor mentor, to look right at me and say, you don't listen to people. That changed my mind. That changed my focus on. Now I sit back and I listen and I observe, and a lot of leaders like to talk and they like to be the voice and all that. I have such a wonderful team that works with me, that every one of them knows where their roles are and what they're doing. They're the voice. They're the voice of the organization. I sit and listen, and if things go a little bit sideways, conversation, or bring up maybe another idea to say, hey, have we thought about this aspect of how we can get better at what we do? But listen, listen, listen. I can't stress that enough with any leader out there. If you don't listen to your people, they're going to have nothing to say.
Mm, I like that. If you don't listen to your people, they're going to have nothing to say. I'm very interested in that story you told about your favorite college professor. How that's such a direct piece of feedback. What was it about your relationship with that professor and about maybe who you are, um, that meant you were able to take that feedback on?
Wow. Thinking back a few years now, I, I, I think I think the reason that it resonated so well with me is, first of all, I respected him as someone that was an absolute wonderful person in their field, knowledgeable, um, and never gave up on me. And I'll share another story with you. Is I wasn't a good student. I wasn't a good high school student. I wasn't a good college student. The model of education that I grew up in didn't work for me. It didn't have there wasn't that diversity instruction. There wasn't any of those types of things that were embedded. It was very rote
Yeah.
memory learning. Regurgitate what you hear, and just make sure that you can take a test. That didn't work for me. So I wasn't a good student. He never gave up on me, though. Even in college, when my grades were below average, and I'm okay with that, because that's how I've grown to be able to help the organization I'm in now, is because not all kids learn the same. Not all staff members learn the same. Not all leaders learn the same. You've gotta be able to adjust and shift and move and pivot as much as possible to be able to find those strengths, and he found that in me. And his very direct conversation with me about listen literally changed my life. And I can't thank him enough for that.
Yeah, I think I can just understand why that's had such a profound impact on you, because I have just come to believe more and more every year that listening is such a game changer. If someone, for leadership, if someone doesn't listen well, it makes everything else almost impossible. And if someone does listen well, it can cover so many other challenges or areas that they need to grow in. But if they listen well, it's such a superpower. So what have you learned about listening? Let's talk about listening, because obviously that was had a big impact on you as a leader. But now, with what you know today, say there's a leader who's listening to this going, yeah, I don't know how well I listen. What advice would you give to someone about how to listen well?
Develop your discernment skills to be discerning with the information that's being told to you. I think I think if you can cut through all the minutia and get to the root of whether it's a problem, whether it's a celebration. How did you get to that celebration point? If you can figure out all of the intricacies within listening and hearing what they're saying, because you and I both know that people will come and they'll give you lip service and have absolutely nothing to really say of value. But then someone else may come and just have 3 or 4 words to say to you, but they're the most profound 3 or 4 words that could alter an entire business model. And so being able to use discernment, I think, is really the key. And if you can develop the discernment skills in line with your listening and hearing, everything becomes very clear. Hence, clarity. I love it.
Yeah. So unpack discernment. I think, particularly for someone once again who might be listening and going, okay, I feel like I listen okay. How do you grow in, and how do you practice, growing in discernment?
I think there's trial and error with all of this stuff. Again, I think it comes down to having the right people in the right places doing the right things. They're going to get you the right information. And if they don't, there's the ability for us to be able to verify that information wasn't correct. Okay, so now let's say employee A has given you this information. Okay, that information wasn't 100% accurate, or they left out some information.
Yeah.
I go back and I ask questions. It's not accusing. There's none of that. It's done with what I consider kindness, which is one of our core values. I do it with kindness. I say, listen, I hear what you're saying here, but what about this step? What about this step? What about this step? What's missing here for me? Help bring clarity to what I need to see so that we can have a broader conversation about it. Because I love the fact that you're telling me these results are coming in, or you have a data wall that has all this data on it. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with the data? How are we changing, adjusting things to make sure that our students are being successful? So just being able to ask additional questions, but take a look at the bigger, and by taking a look at that bigger picture, you've got to be able to try to see that bigger picture, and then know if you make this move over here to the left, you whatever that decision is, what does that affect way out in the future? What does that affect 6 months from now? What does that affect in an operating system somewhere? And
Yeah.
so when I talk about discernment, it's really about trying to build that trust build that team, know that you have the right people in the right places that are going to give you the right information. And then if you think that something doesn't look right or sound right, just ask the clarifying questions. Go to them. But nothing accusatory. Have a conversation. I think there's a lot more respect that's built then. And then if there was something that was missed,
Mm.
90% of the time, I'm going to say it's not going to get missed again, maybe even a higher percentage than that. And so so to me, that's really what discernment is being able to see that the clarifying pieces of what needs to happen or what needs to be done, or the information that's being brought forward.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you mentioned having the right people in the right places at the right times. If we take a step back from that, can you unpack that philosophy and what that looks like in a bit more of a general, because it's such a powerful idea.
So I think that when you look at the people that are in your employ, you have a moral imperative to make sure that they're successful.
Mm.
And the only way you can help people be successful is to make sure that, one, they enjoy what they do. Two, they have the skill sets, or some people call it the bandwidth, to be able to do what you're asking them to do or what their position requires. And then three, do they have the motivation to be able to do what's required of them in that position, or with those tasks that they've been assigned? By asking those questions, first you start out with, do you really like what you do? Okay, if not, what would you like to do for the organization?
Mm.
Okay, we don't have that available. Now, let's take a step back. We don't have that available, but here's where I see your skill sets. Do you see them the same way?
Mm.
And I say that that's a 50-50 question, really, because what I see is one thing and what they see is something different. But if you've already opened it up to them and they're saying, this is what I would like to do, okay, how does that fit within your job that we have here, or the tasks that we have assigned, in your department? How does that filter through? And so, again, having, our core values are transparency, integrity, communication, and kindness.
Mm.
All four of those core values fall into making sure that you have somebody in the right place at the right time doing the right things for the right reasons.
Mm.
And so I don't know if you want more information on that, but to me, it's all about the communication piece, making sure that you're doing it with kindness, making sure that you aren't putting them into a position. Here's where integrity comes in: putting them into a position that they're not going to be successful in.
Yeah.
And then the transparency piece of, hey, listen, we can have transparent conversations about this. Okay, you're not doing so well right here. What can I do to help you? And that's where I step in: is what can I do to help you so that you can get there? Because I know you have the skill sets. Are
Mm.
we missing the motivation? Are we missing maybe some bandwidth in there, and you don't feel comfortable with that yet? And so just having those open communication conversations.
Um, one thing that comes to mind as you unpack that, Mark, I can imagine a leader, and I see this all the time when I'm coaching leaders, going, "Oh, I feel like it's risky to ask someone what would they like to do because I'm afraid, like you said, we won't be able to cater to that, and I don't want to lose them because they're filling a role." That's something that I feel like is a bit of an attitude or perspective that I come across quite a lot. Do you ever have those thoughts, or how do you approach it in light of that sort of perspective?
I do, and that's where the EQ comes in.
Mm.
Know your people, know who they are, know what conversations you can have with them, and know what verbiage that they'll understand, because you can have someone who is a very high level thinker that maybe can't use layman's terms when they're trying to communicate,
Yep.
but their skill sets are fantastic in that world, in that sphere. Help them to be able to work on their communication skills, help them to be able to, you probably don't want someone who might be a numbers person, someone with that math brain, that super science math brain. You probably
Mm.
don't want them doing too many press releases and using language arts to get the information out. So again, it's all about build that trust with your people. Make sure that they know that there's no threatening way to come forward and say this. I want to help you do your job better. I want you to make sure that this is the career that you want. This is where you want to be. And if you're really, really good at this area, then maybe this other part of that area, part of that job description, isn't the best fit for you. So let's find someone else. Or what can I do to help build your people capability to be able to
Mm.
get there so that you can do that piece?
Yeah, that's really profound. I was thinking, another thing that crossed my mind is, how often do you find that your perspective on what someone's strengths are is different to what they see? Or, when you have that conversation about, this is what I see, what do you see? From your experience, how much are you on the mark, and how often are you completely off? Like, what would you say is your experience of that?
I'm gonna fall back on the old 80-20 rule. Just um, it's again, it's we're very fortunate to be able to have the high employee retention that we do in our organization. So I don't see a lot of the turnover where we have to worry about getting people to fit into specific roles or to do things. They've been hired into those roles, and
Mm.
now that they've been hired into those roles, we have the ability to be able to monitor and see, okay, are they doing what's necessary and what needs to be done? And I don't have a lot of heartburn, if you will,
Mm.
with when people make mistakes. And so I think that having grace and kindness when you're dealing with people who make mistakes, or maybe who can't fill certain job duties or job requirements,
Yep.
if they can't do that, then it's a conversation. And then we say, okay, how do we pick up the pieces? How do we move forward? And let's just go. And we don't have time to dwell on what's happened in the past. And again, building that people capability, building those trust lines is imperative to the success of, especially in my organization. It's really the backbone of who we are.
Yeah, I think your employee retention, because you were saying, is it 97% retention?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is such an outlier. And I I guess I flip it around and I wonder why is the opposite so true? I just think so many leaders, and I'm not saying about leaders who don't who aren't aware, aren't self-aware. I'm thinking leaders that I meet who go, I keep losing people. I know that I'm leading this, and I feel like there's a lack of trust. And it's the leader themselves going, how do I change that? I want to create a higher trust environment, but I'm struggling to do that. Or sometimes they even say, I'm doing everything I can, but it's like the people, they're just cynical or skeptical of me. How do you do that high trust environment because I feel like that's the piece that leads to the employee retention, plus picking the right people like you've talked about. But, a leader like that, what would you say to them in terms of how to really develop a truly high trust environment?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need to have the conversations, those exit interviews with them. Okay, why
Mm,
exactly are you leaving? Is it more money? Is it the climate and culture here? Is it benefits? Is it, you can go down a whole laundry list of reasons, and
yeah.
most of what we see here is people leave because of benefits. I see that more than anything else. Not necessarily with our organization, but like here in the state of
Mm,
Arizona, that's why people are leaving their jobs, is because they think they can get better benefits someplace else, or they do get better benefits.
mm,
But the cynical side, that's what I call playing the long game.
mm,
That's when you have to really sit back and you listen and you watch and you pay attention, because people that leave loudly are probably the ones that probably should have gone in the first place. The ones that leave quietly and kind of sneak out the back door, those are the ones you want to find out why they left.
yeah.
Those are the ones you want to have those conversations with.
Oh, that's so good. I'm just laughing because I think that is absolute gold. That's such a great rule of thumb. The ones who leave loudly are often the ones who sort of needed to go anyway, but it's the ones who just quietly you lose and sneak out the back door. They're the ones you really need to find out what was it? Why is it that we weren't able to keep you? Um,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
And,
So
and, if, and if you have, I'm sorry, and if you
you're right.
have those conversations, again, if you have those exit conversations, you can always talk to them and say, okay, what would it have taken to change your
Mm,
mind to stay with the organization? I'm not going to ask you back, but what would it have changed? What one thing could I have done as a leader? And a lot of leaders don't want to own that either. They don't want that
mm,
personal accountability themselves. Hey, you know what? I'm the problem that they're leaving. I'm the reason that they're leaving. Maybe, maybe not.
yeah.
But you need to ask and you need to find out and you need to own it. If it is your leadership style that's causing people to leave, then you need to figure out what in your leadership style is doing that, and have those conversations, those transparent conversations, to be able to build that trust in. Because if you think that someone's leaving and they aren't going to talk to employees that are still working for you and say, I can't believe so and so, I can't believe you're still staying there because of the leadership or whatever it is, they're
Mm,
going to talk to their friends, and they're going to let their friends know why they left. So
yeah.
you may as well find out first before you hear it from others.
I'm just laughing because that's so true. Um, and so EQ, when you're thinking of people you're hiring, or you're managing, something that I've been pondering recently and scratching my head over is, what do you do when maybe you hire them, or maybe you come into a role where you've got someone on your team and you realize, there's a bit of a lack of self-awareness here. There might be a low EQ that they really need to grow
Mhm.
in, but the problem that I've experienced and coaching leaders who've experienced this is that sometimes you feel like there's no way to approach this with this person where they're going to get it, or whenever I try to bring an angle to it, they misinterpret. Um, how, yeah, that's something really interesting. Do you have any thoughts on hiring or managing people who might struggle in the emotional intelligence area, and how to go about that?
I do, because there are plenty of employment opportunities for people with lower EQ.
Hmm.
Um, if you hire a leader with low EQ, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If you hire someone who is going to be a follower, or in a position where they might not have any type of authority or reporting structure under them, you can get away with people that may have a little lower EQ.
Mm,
So it really just depends on what you're hiring for, and if they're already hired in the position, what can you do to help them to be successful in the tasks that you give them? Not
mm,
necessarily that you need them to be superstars, but
mm,
what can you do to help them out? Because I will tell you that within our organization there are some people that have a lack of self awareness.
mm,
They're typically the ones that you hear from a lot,
mm,
in different ways, but being able to work with them and say, okay, let's focus you back in on this is the task at hand. This is what we need to get done. What can I do to help you here? Instead of, I guess the best way to look at that would be like herding cats. You just can't do it. And so let's focus in. Let's get some laser focus on this is what we need. This is the task at hand. This is what we need to get done. Can you do that? And then come back to me and let's move on to the second thing,
mm.
because new leaders that come in, you know it as well as I do. New leaders that come in want to go 100 miles an hour and get everything done all in one shot.
Mm,
That never works out well for anybody.
mm. Yeah, so true. So tell me about your hiring process, Mark, because with 97% retention, like I said, that's just an amazing KPI. Like that's an amazing piece of fruit from a lot of the things that you must be doing. So when you are looking to hire someone, particularly say at an executive or leadership level in one of the schools or for your team, say you created a new role or for some reason there was a really a key sort of role that you needed to fill. What do you think about? What's the process you go through with hiring?
Uh, the best advice I can give if you're hiring someone into a leadership role, it's not somebody that's worked for you before and you're hiring them up into a leadership role, but if
Mm,
it's someone new coming into the organization, you get your trusted people on a panel and you do panel interviews with them so
mm,
that everybody gets their say. Whether, yes, this would be a good fit culturally for us, or you know what, not a good cultural fit for Edkey in general, or
yeah.
you know they're newer. We think we can help build them into fitting into the culture of Edkey. And so it's really just a matter of making sure you have the right people on the interview panels.
Mm,
And then if it's a really high level position, let's say like an assistant superintendent or something like that, I'll meet with them one on one after they go through a panel interview. They may send me one or two candidates, but again, it doesn't happen just because we have so many people that stay and
mm,
and enjoy and love what Edkey is all about. So yeah, the panel interview is huge, and I know there are a lot of people out there that do panel interviews, but
mm,
again, don't have the same people on the panel every time. Maybe someone local from the school, a teacher that actually works at the school should be on the panel.
mm,
Maybe an assistant superintendent that person wouldn't report to. Maybe that person should be on the panel too.
mm.
Someone from human resources. Switch it up. Have different people being able to come in and give their opinions on, hey, yeah, this person would be a great fit for the organization, or you know what, we need to keep looking.
Yeah, that's great. I think I agree about. the power of a panel because sometimes, sometimes there'll be a red flag that one person picks up that you wouldn't have, and you go, "Oh, actually, yes." And other times there'll be a red flag that you think you picked up that when you actually discuss as with other panelists, you realize, "Oh, I probably misread that." And I think
Yeah.
that is crucial because it's often though those things are often very obvious once you have a group of people involved, and I love that. I love that advice. So let's go
Yeah.
back to the right people, in the right place at the right time with the right, that sort of sequence. Uh, what are you looking for? You've got your core values, but what are you looking for in terms of who a person is? Do you have any thoughts on who, what you look for as the right person for any job with Edkey? Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of the sort of person you want to employ?
Well, we want people that are going to, embrace the core values,
Mm,
that are going to embrace the moniker of, where every child is known, where, people that are going to embrace the possibility of change. How difficult is change on people?
mm,
Education is evolving, and if the COVID outbreak didn't teach us one thing, the antiquated system of education and the way it's taught is outdated. It is completely outdated. And if we don't step forward and change how we're educating individuals, we've lost a huge opportunity. So when we look at who we want to bring into the organization, we want people that are going to be able to embrace, like I said, the change, the core values, the mission and vision of whatever school they're at, or if it's the mission and vision of Edkey, depending on what that role is. We want to find people who have a track record of success, who have a track record of doing the best they can, even in very difficult situations. I mean, education is a rough industry.
mm.
Used to be, people used to think of education as being all, flowers and helping kids, and it's rough out there. It's rough out there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's um, you know, education has changed, it's evolved, and there are a lot higher expectations from parents, from staff, from administration, from school boards, from governing bodies, from the departments of education. There are a lot higher standards that people are looking for that have really come to light since this pandemic. And so, if I'm hiring you into a leadership role within the organization, are you going to be able to adapt? Are you going to be able to change? Are you going to be able to be that support person that I need you to be for the schools?
Mm,
There's all kinds of different things that I look at from my perspective, but the most important perspective is what's best for kids. Is this the right
yeah.
person to do what's best for kids? And if I can get if I get the right answer, if I hear the right answer in an interview, or if the interview panel hears those right answers, we're pretty certain that we're going to have someone that's going to be a long haul employee for our organization.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. I What I'm hearing there is some real clarity around who your organization is and what's most important to you, and that is very clearly driving finding people who are going to be really aligned with that. So, if we take that, how did you come to such a clear understanding of the purpose of EdKey and the values? Was that there before you began 5 years ago, or is that something that you've really crafted in the past 5 years?
I'd almost defer that question off to my team.
Mm,
They would probably be able to give you a little better answer than I can. But I do know there was a lot of turmoil when they were looking for a new CEO and hired me. There's a lot of turmoil, a lot of turnover, a lot of issues going on within the organization, financially, student outcomes wise. There were just a lot of loose ends out there that were leading to essentially the demise of the organization.
sure.
And so, when I came in, one of the first things I did is I had to take a look. Obviously, you look at the finances first. You say, okay, we got to fix something here.
Mm,
Otherwise, none of the rest of it matters. So by fixing some of the financial stuff, we were able to get back on track, and then we could switch right over to saying, okay, what can we get back into the schools, classrooms, all that stuff. So I can't really speak for before my time, other than the fact that when I came in, it was full of a lot of challenges. And I'm very fortunate and blessed beyond measure to have the team that I do. And we were looking for 180 teachers the first year I came on. This last year we were looking for 27. And the only reason we were looking for 27 is because we expanded and our student population had grown so much that we needed to get new positions filled.
Wow. Incredible. That's that's just amazing, Mark. There, I can just imagine the leaders out there. I know I'm listening to that going, that's such a good feeling. That's for so many reasons to be able to be in that place, and also because that represents so many people who are really loving what they're doing and enjoying being part of something bigger than themselves. So how do you, and I know we've already touched on this a little bit, so how do you make sure you're finding someone when you're hiring into these roles? What do you look for to make sure you're finding the right person for the right job? Because we talked about who you're looking for, but how do you try to find someone that's going to really flourish doing that particular role? How do you and your team do that?
So I think we do it backwards. I honestly think we do it backwards. We find the people that are the best fit for our culture and for who Edkey is and the students we serve. We look for that person first, and then train them into doing specific duties or whatever. Our professional development is absolutely amazing. I it, quick story on that. Having a conversation with the chief financial officer, and I'm sure you've seen this published out there somewhere. But we literally had the conversation where he's like, "Well," he goes, "we're going to spend all this money on training these people," and then he goes, "The history that we had before you got here. We're going to train them, and they're going to leave." And I just looked at him. I said, "You've got to understand that if we're in a worse situation if we don't train them and they stay." It's the professional development piece. So we hire people who have the personality and they all have resumes. You can make your resume look as glorious as you want. But word of mouth also, the education space isn't that big. And so a lot of us know each other throughout the entire education space. Here in the United States, I mean, coast to coast, it's you cross paths with a lot of educational folks throughout your career. And so when you get a recommendation saying, "Hey, we've got this assistant superintendent. I know you don't have a position right now, but future planning says we may need them for this or for this or for this. Okay, are they available now? Okay, let's hire them. And then work them into those other roles. Bring them in, get them to learn the culture, and then figure out what those exact skill sets are that they're going to be able to step into and take over and to be able to help the team as a whole." So a little bit backwards.
Yeah, I love it. I think I haven't thought about it as backwards before, but you're right. It's saying let's just find the right people. Let's find the right people for our organization, and let's get them on board. When we come across them, let's hire them, and then let's train them for the role that they're going to flourish in and make it work. I completely agree. And so let's talk about managing people, because it's one thing that naturally comes to mind when I hear these sort of stories is there is that little bit of there's that little bit of cynicism, I think, because of leaders. If I think of leaders out there who maybe have just had a really terrible experience with someone that they found very difficult, and they hear these sort of stories, and there can be a bit of an eye roll, or the perspective, like the CFO said, "Oh, well, track record says that these people are going to leave." How do you manage your people when you've got those sort of core values? How do you manage people really, really well and really, really tightly, but also keep such an amazing culture? And I know we've touched on a little bit of this already, but I can just imagine leaders out there listening and going, well, how do you actually do that? How do you keep that culture? How do you manage people And I'm interested to know what specifically you do. What do you measure? How often do you meet? Can you answer that?
Sure. So I will tell you that as a support team, a lot of people look at and say, oh, they're the management team, they're their district or whatever. We're actually just a support team. That's
Mm,
that's that's first and foremost. So my team understands that we're here to support the schools and the people at the schools and the students, the staff. We're here to support them. They have an ask. We don't say no. We say, let's see what we can do. Let's you know
yeah.
let's build that. So it's not this top down authoritarian structure that a lot of people look at in leadership roles. And if you're a leader that's your main focus, you're in leadership. You're in leadership role because you want power, not
Mm,
because you're trying to make people better. You want power. And so for us, it's all about that support piece. And it's not, no one needs to take credit for it. Um, you know,
yeah.
give credit where credit is due. And that's my job, is to be able to make sure that I pass out that credit wherever it's earned and wherever it's due. But at the end of the day, my team doesn't care who gets credit for it, as long as it's done the right way and it's done in the best interest of students. That's really what that all comes down to with the support team. But we meet twice a week,
Mm,
or I'm sorry, twice a month, and or every other week. But I am in contact with my assistant superintendents, with my CFO, with my controller, director of human resources, director of special ESS services, student instructional support team.
yep.
I am available to them whenever they need me.
Mm,
Whether if I'm on vacation, I will take their call because they know I'm on vacation. So if they're calling me, I know that it's something important that we need to sit and have a conversation. And it may just be a 2-minute conversation saying, yes, no, go ahead, do that. That's great. Thank you for checking in with me. And that'll be the last time I hear from them until I'm back from vacation. So, again, it's building that trust and knowing who your people are and what they're capable of. One of the stories here within our organization is every principal that is on a campus is the captain of their own ship. I'm
mm,
still the admiral. I still have, the buck stops here 100% of the time, but they're the captains of their ship, and they are allowed to make mistakes. They're
mm,
allowed to fail if they need to, but they made a decision. The decision didn't go the way they wanted it to. We have that conversation with them and say, okay, what was your thought process? How did we get here? What are we going to do so that, this doesn't happen again next time? And trying to build up that confidence to be able to take it and run, because the last thing that we need in education is people micromanaging other people.
mm.
Let people do their jobs. We hired them for a reason. Let them do their jobs.
How do you do that? I know I know it's a simple question, but I know leaders struggle with this so much. I think, and just before you answer that, I think leaders struggle with how to let people do their jobs without this. There's this fear that in 6 months' time you realize that they've gone off and done something completely off the they've just gone off the wire, and it's like, oh no. So say there's a leader out there going, I know that I want to release people and I want to create a culture where they can make more mistakes. How do I do that and address this fear that I have that they'll just run off and change everything?
I think the checks and balances is where this really comes in. Making sure
Mm,
that you have, whether it's one of my direct reports or maybe it's one of the principals at one of the campuses, wherever that person is in our organizational chart, being able to have those open, transparent conversations with them. I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that this hasn't happened to us, because it has. We've had principals that have, and I'm going to say this in the nice possible way, gone rogue,
mm,
and we have had to deal with that. We have had to, but if you have the layers of transparency and communication, especially in the communities we serve,
mm,
they're going to tell us that something's not right. They're going to share that information. They will come out and they'll put it out on social media all over the place and let you know without even talking to you that, hey, your school messed up or your principal messed up. They'll let us know. And then it's all in, how do you deal with it? How do you then do the damage control?
mm,
What is that? what does that upstream thinking look like to be able to say, all right, yes, this principal messed up. And if it's something, really egregious, then we have to obviously coach them out of the organization as well. So you coach up, coach out, whatever it takes. But leaders can't be afraid of that. Leaders can't be afraid to let people do their jobs. They've got to be able to step back, because if you are afraid of letting people do their jobs, you're just micromanaging them. You're micromanaging them. Keep your eye on the ball. Trust yet verify.
Trust yet verify. The thing that that comes to mind for me as you unpack that is something I've run into is leaders who feel like, say, if I'm talking to someone who's at a departmental level, they feel like they've got certain KPIs, but then they'll hear from their leader who comes to them and says, actually, I've just heard that this particular, if you think in schools, I've just we've just heard that there's a bit of unhappiness around the curriculum. And they're going, well, wait a second, and all my KPIs in this area I'm meeting. And it can feel like leaders react to one piece of information rather than actually getting a sort of a pulse check or sticking to the KPIs that they've set. This is something that I see again and again and again. How do you view that? How do you overcome it as a leader? And I guess I really love the way you approach this, Mark. So I'm interested to know how you think about making sure, if there's one piece of information that comes to you, what would you do as the leader to bring that to someone and make sure that you're being true to holding them to the KPIs you've set for them, and not some other standard that all of a sudden appears?
Ask the questions. Just ask the questions. Nothing accusatory. Nothing. Say, hey, this came down the line. Can we have a conversation about this? I just want to get some, again, clarity. And I'm going to tell you, I love that about you. The whole clarity piece. It just, that's my life. That's what I live. I ask the right questions to get clarity, not to accuse somebody, not to run them out of the organization. I just want to find out, okay, if this is being said, what can I help do to stop that? Because if it's coming from just one person, and depends on how egregious, again, that it is. Do I need to open a full-blown investigation, or can I just have a conversation about it and then circle back with whoever made the accusation? Say, listen, this is the information. What exactly did you hear? What exactly do you think is going on? Because I've got a different perspective. I just want to clarify it with the accuser. I want to clarify it with the person that's being accused. I want to be able to find out, just to get to the bottom of it. And leaders can't be afraid to ask those questions. They can't be afraid to step forward. And, there are times when you need to know if you need to stand in front of your people, if you need to stand behind them or to the side of them. There are times, and you need to make sure, again, it goes back to discernment. What do they need at that season in time of their life?
How do you know? That's so good. I have to ask, how do you know whether to stand in front of, behind, or to the side for you, and what does each of those look like?
So you just asked me about the the accusations. When one piece of it, one person came forward with this piece of information that was that was unfavorable to another employee. So with the employee that's being accused, you start out and you stand by the side and you ask them and just say, hey, you know what? I heard this came down the line. What can you tell me about this? Because I want to make sure that I'm supporting you in the right way. So that support piece is right there, side by side, guide by the side kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you can have a group, or let's say people that come in with groupthink, and a whole bunch of accusations come in against someone.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now you're going to stand in front of them. And the reason you're going to stand in front of them is because you want to protect both sides, to make sure that these accusations, if they're true, we want to protect the people who are making the accusations. But if they're false, we want to make sure we're protecting the individual that's being accused. And so going through the whole process that'd be like an investigation of some kind. Yeah. So that's what standing in front would be. Standing behind is knowing that they have the ability to be able to move forward with whatever has been presented on their own and trust that they're going to make the right decision. Now, sometimes that right decision may be that they're going to resign. You're standing
Mm,
behind, and you'll help them in that transition, but you're not
yeah.
going to stand in front of them and stop them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but that's kind of my mentality on just knowing what your people need at whatever given time in season of their life.
Yeah, that's no, that's really good. I think I'm trying to work out how it fits in that sort of picture of in front, beside, or behind. But one of the biggest things that I'd say I hear from people who end up leaving a leader, they leave a leader, is that they didn't have my back. But I think that that might be a saying, but I think you've hit the nail on the head with what that looks like, because my experience is often there'll be something comes to the leader and they react in a way where they don't do any of those three things. And I don't know what they're doing, but it's not it's not the guide from the side. It's not stepping in front of them, and it's not having their back. It's something
They
different.
ran the other way. They ran the other way.
Mm, yeah, you're right. And
Yeah,
and
fight or
they
flight.
yeah, and they leave them isolated, and that's
Right.
hard to come back from. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that and I hope, and I'm just speaking for myself here, but I hope that the members of my team understand that flight really isn't in my vocabulary.
Mm,
So and I think most of them appreciate the fact that I'm a calculated risk taker, and I'm there to be able to help and support and defend our organization, no
mm.
matter what role you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Um, what I'd like to do, Mark, is this has just been so rich. I've enjoyed this so much. I think it would be great to do a part two down the track, because I feel like I could ask 20 more questions. But where I want to land, so hopefully we can do that down the track and do a bit of a part two, and maybe hit on some of the other thoughts around leadership that you have, because I just know people are going to get so much out of this. But I guess to land today, is there a story that comes to mind that really, and I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but is there a story that comes to mind that really sums up your leadership ethos, or maybe for you, and this might be a bit similar to the 7 questions that you did, but a story that really you reflect on as a very meaningful story for you as a leader, or that you've come across that represents what leadership means to you?
Sure. I guess I can go back to when I first came on board with this organization.
Mm,
Um, there were a lot of people that were very fearful that as a new leader, that I was going to come in and hire all my own people and replace all of them. That those were actual words that were said to me in my office. I think on day two,
wow.
um, and and just to this day, there is one individual that is working for the organization, that I've known for a long, long time, that
Mm,
came on a couple years after I started. I think he's been there 3 years now, um, but when I met with and they were called a management team back then.
mm,
I've changed that to a support team at this point,
mm.
but as the management team, as I had those conversations with them, they started to see that I was there to see what their skill sets were. I wasn't,
Mm.
I didn't have, I had a portfolio of people that would have loved to come work for me, but why would I, why would I take somebody out of an organization that has the breadth and knowledge of how things have been going?
Yeah.
Why would I remove them from the organization? And so what I did was I actually built that trust layer in, pretty quickly, where they
Mm,
knew I wasn't there to rock the, tip over the apple cart, if you will. I was there to be able to support each one of them and find what their strengths were. What did they want to do? What were things that they weren't, and I'm going to say it in the nicest possible way. What weren't they good at? What
Mm.
what were things that, yeah, you're not going to get there. I'm having this conversation with you, and I can tell just by the tears in your eyes as I'm just having a conversation that you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
But you're really strong here, and this is where I need you. This is where I need you to excel. This is your hero moment, is to do this right here for this organization,
Mm.
and keep doing this over here and be that hero. So I think that was the start of really how Edkey, our organization, has turned the corner. We
Yeah.
were losing $3.5 million a year when I came on, and that's a lot of money to lose.
Mm.
And then just this last year, we've had almost a $10 million swing. So
Wow.
we have contingency. But we push all that money back into the schools. Our student population grew from 4,000 students to about 11,000. I mean, those are the things that, people that have been with this organization for a long time. Some people have been working for this organization for over 20 years.
Wow.
That's when they first started. That's when this
Yeah.
organization first started, was 20 years ago. So they've been here the whole time. And so they've seen this transition. They've seen how it's gone from that management structure to a support structure. They've seen how it's gone from, being financially at risk to financially viable. They've seen how our student outcomes have gone from, mostly underperforming across the board to now outperforming state averages at most of our locations. So
Yeah.
those are the people that we really need to talk to, and we really need to keep them as that knowledge base. And that's what I did with the support team when I came on. I said, listen, we're going to find out what everybody does best, and we're going to use that, and we're going to really leverage those skill sets and make sure that you're successful for the success of the organization. And that's really the telltale sign of how things have gone since 2016.
Yeah. That's an incredible story, and I just want to say to those who might be listening who feel like maybe they're in a 2016,
Uh-huh.
experience, that they should be encouraged because it is possible. And one of my favorite mantras is that Patrick Lencioni saying, which he talks about in terms of building teams, that it's both possible and remarkably simple, but painfully difficult. And I think you've gone through the painfully difficult work of sticking to transparency and kindness and communication. And what was the other one? Integrity.
Yes,
Yeah.
transparency, integrity, communication, and kindness.
And I think they're amazing core values. And I think that would be my encouragement to those listening who might listen and go, oh, that would be amazing. It is possible. And wow, there's so many great takeaways from this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing, Mark. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure being on, and I look forward to again, all the wonderful things you're doing out there as well. I can't thank you enough for the leadership that you bring to the world.
Thank you, Mark. You're very kind, and I know this is going to be a real blessing to every leader who listens. So I just want to encourage you all out there who might be listening, that you can go and implement some of these things and keep taking your leadership, keep investing in people, which is really, in one way, sums up Mark's approach, and we can change the world by investing in people and supporting. I love that picture, being a supporter, a team of supporters. And thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. Don't forget to subscribe or follow wherever you listen. It helps to keep you in the loop. And if today helped you, if you got something out of that, then please share with your network. That way we can reach more people. We can invest in them to become everything they're meant to be. And you can do that on social media, any way you like. And another thing that helps us out a lot here at the Leadership Conversations podcast is if you leave us a review wherever you're listening. We also have a free resource for you. It's called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook that contains interviews with 10 great leaders from around the world. You can go to consultclarity.org. It's right there at the top of the homepage, and it's completely free. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and you can subscribe to that by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. And last of all, you can check out my book. It's about how to deal with difficult people. I wrote this book because 50% of my coaching sessions or thereabouts, this topic would come up. I believe it's one of the biggest challenges for leaders today. And so I wrote this book. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book if you want to buy it from there. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time, and I really hope that today has helped you take another step towards becoming everything you're meant to be. See you next time.